right, good evening, everyone. It's January 24th, and this is a special or regular select board meeting. I asked before, but I'll ask again. John, was this meeting properly warned?
Yes, it was.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll look for a motion on the minutes.
Ooh.
Yeah, Jess.
I move that we approve the minutes of December 20th, 2022 and January 10th, 2023.
Jess has made a motion to approve the minutes of December 20th, 2022 and January 10th, 2023. Is there any discussion, board? No? Public?
Apologies for the delay and the length.
Yeah, and I'll take a moment just to thank our clerk for her work and to Jessica Stickler for putting together the minutes there. They're very comprehensive and do good work in capturing what occurred in these important meetings. So thank you. Seeing no other comment, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Carries 5-0. Thank you very much. All right, chair remarks. Very quickly, next Monday, January 30th is the deadline, 5 p.m. town clerk's office for petitions. If you're running for anything, RTM rep, select board, school official, if you've got any questions, contact the town clerk, and get out there, get your signatures, and get them in. Looking to Hillary, if they can they put it in the Dropbox on Friday, and it will be checked by the end of the day.
Sorry.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. So Friday, yes, we'll check it at 5, and then they have until Monday at 5 p.m. So we'll check the box on Monday at 5 p.m. as well. And if I may, I just
Please.
also remind folks who are up for re-election were mailed a letter of intent, and they do not need a petition. They just need to sign the letter of intent with the same deadline.
And okay, so letters of intent as well, same deadline, Monday 30th, 5 p.m. town clerk. Excellent. Thank you very much. And my only other thing is, as people will notice, we've put some time stamps on the agenda for the select board meeting tonight, and I know you will all enjoy watching me attempt and fail to keep to it. So we'll continue to probably utilize these in the future and try our best to hold to them so that the public knows when things are coming up on the agenda for the evening. With that, I hand it over to John for manager's comments.
Thanks, Ian. Two things tonight. First, there were quite a few trees and wires down around town during Monday's storm. As you all know, DPW Director Dan Tyler reported 10 road closures that staff were coordinating with Green Mountain Power to clear up. The goal was to get all roads opened and trees removed today while continuing with the plowing, salting, and sanding and bracing for the next storm. And I understand that Green Mountain Power has made excellent progress all day, and we will have all roads open except the Black Mountain Road spur. Will be the only remaining one as of this evening, as far as we know. One of the sidewalk plows went out of service, so clearing sidewalks has been slower than we would like, but it's expected to be operating again by tomorrow. Finally, on that, staff are planning to remove the snow from the downtown area on Friday night, so following the next storm. The other thing is that Town Clerk Hillary Francis asked me to remind everyone that for the town meeting day election, they must request an absentee ballot in order to have the town mail one out to them. Absentee ballots are not automatically mailed out for local elections, so if you would like such a ballot, please contact the town clerk's office. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, John. Moving on to agenda item 5, select board comments and committee reports. Board members, comments? Liz.
Thank you, Ian. Well, today I have returned my petition for re-election to the select board for a 3-year term, and I'm asking the people of Brattleboro to allow me to return to service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Other board members? Jess.
I have also returned my petition to the clerk's office for another 1-year term on the select board. So it's been a delight serving. I hope to continue.
Great. Thank you, Jess. Other board members? Tim?
I just want to reiterate, you sort of implied it in your remarks, John, but the incredible work yesterday by the Brattleboro Fire Department and, of course, Golden Cross, our partner in that effort with EMS services, and our Brattleboro Police Department and Public Works, and really all town departments. But those are the big three that I'm thinking of. They had quite a day.
Yeah.
And I think we should be thankful and appreciative. So.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Tim. Liz?
There's some incredible videos of the plow on social media.
Is it doing donuts?
They don't have to.
All right. Any other comments, committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to public participation. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on an item that's not on the agenda or to request an item on the consent agenda be pulled in place at the end of the warned agenda. So I think I saw a hand up first. If you want to, and I'll just look to see you.
My name's Dale Joy. I live in Brattleboro. And there are two things I had talked about before about the tiny housing for homeless. And there are 8 states in participation. I'll give you the list of things. Wisconsin is doing exceptionally well. California, different areas not. But it would be good if you could check those out because in the long run, it's going to be a lot cheaper than housing them in motels. I know our tourism is down, so that helps right now with motel, hotel. But long term, to get it so that you can help these people that are homeless have a place, a stable place, and be like Wisconsin, where a lot of them went to work because they were stable. And they're participating in paying taxes and everything like everybody else. Okay, the other item is the ABA, American Bar Association. 36% of attorneys and judges are alcoholics. Yes, nationwide, with the highest in Vermont at 80%. Really blew my mind.
80%.
80%. And this is from 2016. It's the first 15 years they did on these people, so you be careful, okay? In 2016, it was only 20% alcohol abuse in lawyers and judges. 2022, it went up 81 to 84%. They're still talking that. But if that's happening in our judicial system, can you imagine what they're doing? I only know one judge that was drunk every day, that he was on the bench, and he was right here in Brattleboro, and that's where when I was growing up. Okay, he was drunk every day, and he gave alcoholics the worst punishment too. But anyways, I want everybody to be aware of that because we got to change our legal system to be responsible for their own actions. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Got a hand in, I think it's Kurt.
Hello. Am I working?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you. You are good to go. Just state your name.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Mr. Potter. I'm Kurt Dimes. I live in District 2. I work with Brattleboro Common Sense. My friends on the board may recognize the so-called just cause eviction petition as the one that I submitted to you in December of 2020. Elizabeth was kind enough to comment on it in the Google Doc several months ago. But I want you to know, I think everybody ought to know, that the petition, which was certified by the town clerk and on which we will have a vote in March, is not entirely the work of BCS. It's an unauthorized version. And the part that you don't like, the part that probably a lot of people don't like, that makes all leases binding on landlords in perpetuity, is plainly illegal. It was not vetted by that is by BCS's attorney, and it is a hijacked version. I'm encouraging everyone, although BCS will probably get blamed for it, that is not entirely our work, and I encourage people to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kurt. And I'll just remind the public that there are going to be 2 public hearings on the petition that Mr. Dimes just referenced on Friday, February 3rd at 6:15 or 6:30? 6:15. And then also it will have, as we do sometimes, there'll be a public hearing element of the select board meeting on February 7th. And that meeting will start at 6:15. And we'll see where we work the public hearing into the meeting agenda, which you'll be able to find before the meeting itself. Back to the room. Yeah. Come on down.
Good evening. My name's Kate Traskis. I am the Executive Director of the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, a mission-driven, member-supported organization that nurtures and supports the vitality of downtown Brattleboro. Tonight, I am here to talk about crime in downtown Brattleboro and to paint a picture of the landscape that I see today and the potential of what that could be in the future. I came into this role in September and was really excited, felt like there's a lot of energy behind Gallery Walk, behind bringing people together. And as I walk down Main Street today, there are about 10 to 12 empty storefronts and about a half dozen businesses that have been on Main Street for 30, 35, 40 plus years. So there's some natural turnover that's going to happen. And I'm concerned as I think about bringing new businesses to town when small businesses, 20% fail in their first year, that what are they stepping into? Several of our downtown shops were broken into over the last week. We came to this board back in November talking about the crime in town. And I think people are feeling frustrated and feeling really vulnerable. It takes a lot to run a small business. Many of these folks work 5 to 7 hours or 7 days a week to provide a service to the town. They are competing with online sales. They're competing with tax-free shopping in New Hampshire. But these folks are dedicated and they show up and they celebrate every single sale. And they value the relationship that they have with their customers. And they donate to the schools and our sports teams. And there is harm that's happening to them too. And so I think that we can sit with both of those things being real, right? That there are vulnerable populations in our community and that our business owners feel vulnerable as well. I think we can hold both of those as true. We would like to have more transparency and proactive communication about what is actually happening to deter crime from occurring downtown. We would like to know what those deterrents are and how we're holding people accountable for their actions. Back in November when we were here, there was a long discussion about cameras, and we have yet to hear what the status is on that. I think that we all want this town to thrive, and I think Brattleboro, without a thriving downtown, that's going to be a real negative impact on everyone who lives here. So that's where I'm coming from in trying to raise the plea and the voices of the folks downtown who are feeling this day after day. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Kate, for that. I think I wanted to give the town manager an opportunity to specifically respond to sort of the request for transparency and communication. We have an opportunity with a new leader in the town manager's office, who wasn't here in November and is new to the community. I think there's an opportunity to have a reset here, which would be good. And I want to just give him a moment to speak to that if he's willing.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and I would just say that, I'm starting to understand many of the issues, and obviously what you're raising here, Kate, is a very significant issue for the town. And I would like to set up some sort of a standing meeting so that we could share both what the town is working on and also get ideas from businesses about, what we could be doing better. So I would welcome having a standing meeting to do that sort of thing. So.
And so, if we can, and to actually make that happen, if you want to reach out to the town manager's office or have us reach out to you to set up when that time is, and maybe not just you, but if you have a couple of representatives from the DBA or just from downtown businesses who want to be in that meeting as well. And then that way we can keep the communication line open about what's actually happening, because things are happening, but we can do better to communicate those. And maybe there are new things that we could be working on, but that can start in a dialogue. And then maybe that can work its way into an agenda on a select board meeting and get action taken. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, back to Zoom. Seeing none, back to the room. Yes. Welcome, Frick. Haven't seen you here in a while. Say your name and where you're from for the record.
Howdy, neighbor.
Howdy.
Frick Sprite, from the former District 3. I don't know what it is now.
Still 3.
Okay,
Still 3.
Good, good.
It's complicated. We don't have to get into it. Let's not get into it right now.
Okay.
You go.
Anyway, having long been concerned about issues of housing in the town, and being concerned about small businesses as well, and the break-ins and general levels of accountability or lack thereof, I would echo what she said about the compatibility, hopefully, or the ability to take care of all the people, whatever their vulnerabilities are. And I would urge the Select Board to do what they can to consider accountability as a top priority in protecting the whole town. And towards that end, and towards the end of solving other problems that are obviously on a lot of people's minds, I am urging the Select Board to re-impanel the Housing Committee that apparently is in the charter. I did not realize that when we circulated a petition over 48 hours and got north of 250 signatures, actually almost 300, but some of them were invalidated for petition purposes, but they were still residents of the town. And the town clerk has a copy of that, and I can get you guys a copy if she can't conveniently. I know she's busy. One of the things that seems to be lost on a lot of people is that landlords provide critical services to about half of the population of the town. So I think a new reinvigorated what I was billing as a housing policy review committee. I think it's got a simpler name in the charter, and not much details other than that, what it should do or who it should involve. I would like to find a way to engage in a deeper conversation about how to do that and what it would involve. And if you guys are willing, I'd be willing to serve on it, and I also know people in various roles who might also be willing to serve on it. So,
Great. Thank you very much, Rick. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Are you referring to the Affordable Housing Committee?
no.
Which committee are you referring to?
Are you talking about in the charter?
Yes.
The little snippet I saw out of the charter that someone quoted just said Housing Committee.
There is a committee in here that says Affordable Housing Committee to be composed of 5 to 9 members appointed by the board with terms of 3 years to meet monthly to evaluate quantity and quality of affordable housing in the community and to make recommendations to the select board.
Does it exist?
Nope.
Okay. But it's supposed to exist.
It can.
I thought it was in the charter. It's a
Well,
thing that.
it doesn't
anyway.
currently. It was-
Yeah, no, but
you
we-
referred to a committee in the charter, so I just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Okay.
I think that's the one that, I mean, if that's the one that is housing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you
Okay,
for,
So what's the best way to?
if you,
that-
actually, yeah, if you want to put a formal request in for an agenda item, that, if you just want to email me or Daniel or the town manager's office, that is the best way to make sure that it gets the agenda.
So you need a more formal request than this right here?
No, we can do it this way too, but if you want
Okay.
to be a little bit, if you want to be a little more specific about exactly what you're requesting, sometimes I find
Okay.
kind of collecting.
I will email you a copy of the petition that was circulated,
There we go.
and we can go from there. Right?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. All right, so I don't see any other hands on Zoom or in the room. So we're going to move on.
No, there's
Oh,
one.
sorry.
Hi, my name's Jonas Murray. I'm a local business owner. I own Malleson with my wife. We were downtown. We just moved to Exit 1. You guys know, thanks for the nods. I am also now the president of the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to speak further about the downtown situation. The thing you were just talking about, I'd like to be part of that as well with the communication.
Yep.
I just want to say, I appreciate that we're all working on this now. In July, there was of 2017, there was an article Mr. Wessel was part of, quoted, "Regardless of your personal opinion, it's enough of a legitimate concern to enough of our community. As a select board, we should once again give it some attention." This is 2017. That's once again attention. That's quite a while ago. Mr. DeGray had pointed out in the same article, he said if you were in downtown, you could get hit 5 to 6 times by panhandlers. And he warned that if you think that that's a problem, it is. He said, I think that we're past warning time. It's 5 years later. I think that it's clear that damage has been done. I personally have been a part of downtown since 1989. My mother opened a pushcart, Mideast Feast, which turned into Sarkis Market, and our business overlapped. So we've consistently been a part of town until last year. I moved out of downtown, and honestly, I've not been more concerned for the future of town. It's really concerning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Greg Lesh, I'm the Executive Director of the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce. That
Welcome,
was my
Greg.
new boss. I just wanted to sort of dovetail on that and emphasize the other part of this, aside from the financial burden that these merchants who are broken into face, the expensive glass that has to be replaced on their doors, and a lot of them have high deductibles. So they're coughing up this money for the repairs totally. The other part of it is the emotional component. When you see your neighboring businesses broken into, and this last rash it seemed like it was 5 businesses in one night. It plays on their emotions, and you begin to be paranoid. Am I next? Am I next? Oh, they just next door, across the street. When are they going to hit me? And you start getting paranoid, and you start feeling worried for your employees and for your staff. Should they be here after it starts getting dark? Should I have someone alone working the shop? Maybe I should have 2 people working. So there's an emotional component, and I can tell you that I've talked to a lot of merchants about this. They're scared. They don't know what's going to happen. When are they going to be hit? When are they going to face a huge expense of having their door replaced or their windows or whatever and whatever? I know the chamber, we have put in surveillance cameras, and we've done some lock work to try and help our tenant. Wyndham Flowers, which has been broken into 5 times within less than 2 months. Things have quieted down for Sally Winchester, but I know she's nervous, and I know she's nervous for her employees. So we have to prioritize this. I know we're all aware of it. We're all aware of the escalating crime that's been happening in Brattleboro, but I think we really, really have to put our brains together and come up with some solutions, some substantive solutions that are really going to help lessen the effects of this and get Brattleboro back to a little bit more normal business. So thank you.
You're welcome. Not seeing any other hands unless I'm getting an eye contact over there because that's a hand. No? I'll just say mine. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Erin Skaggs, and I'm with DBA and also with the Stone Church. And I just want to, I feel like folks have mostly covered a lot of what I want to say, but I'd like to just reiterate the concept of holding 2 truths. Like, I think there's a really ingrained narrative in this town that commerce, capitalism, and business owners are bad and they don't face bodily harm. And there's real, significant, ongoing danger for people that are most vulnerable in our community. And both of those things are true. And I think it's really important to hold both of those and to let all of those folks feel heard, seen, acknowledged, and supported. I feel like I land really squarely on the spectrum of opinion on this, and so I've observed it. I was here for that last round when it was so severe back in like 2017, 2018. Like, this is not new. It has ebbed and flowed. And so I hope that we can start as a community and a town to move forward in a way that is less divisive, because I think we really all want the same thing. And the other thing I'd like to say is that I think an important distinction that me and Kate and a lot of downtown Brattleboro holds is that we're really not confusing poverty with crime. We're talking about 2 very different things. And so I just want to be real clear about that what we're talking about is crime that is documented and real, and that's what I'd like to focus on.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Erin, for that. And yeah, I absolutely echo that sentiment. And I think that one of the ways we can do that is keeping a communication line open that's a little bit more consistent. So I'd really like to urge the town manager's office to try to get that, beginning that dialogue happening sooner than later.
Can I say something?
Please.
I hadn't planned on talking, but enough people are here to just nice to hear something back from the board, right? Or at least one board member. You know, I'm frustrated too. I live downtown, and I've been through this, as you pointed out. You know, on the board since 2017. There were issues were a little different back then, and we had a different vibe, but a lot of the issues were the same. And I think sometimes we on the board, I think I'm going to speak for many of us, it's a little frustrating because we don't have like levers we can switch to really make a huge difference. But what we are doing, which you should encourage us to continue to do, is to support the Brattleboro Police Department, work with our police chief, make sure that she has the resources that she needs. We are she is working on increasing our staffing at Brattleboro Police Department, and that is a good thing. You can't really argue that the other night when we had 3 break-ins at once, or if it was 5, I'm not sure, I'm aware of 3, I think. That kind of smash and grab activity is really tough to prevent. But having the presence and the quick turnaround on catching these criminals is definitely going to have an effect, I believe. And I think it's getting back to being frustrated. I think it's very frustrating to us because we don't really have specific things to do, although I continue to support speaking about cameras downtown, and I support those actions. I do want to remind everybody that a lot of the camera discussion we were having some months ago was about cameras in the transportation center. We did decide to ask for an RFP, and so that's going to be going forward to get those in. That's simply replacing cameras that used to be there, but hopefully the new cameras would be much more functional. So I want to encourage everybody to hopefully work with the next select board to also help push for change at the state level, because a lot of this is driven by deficiencies, in my opinion, of the Vermont judicial system. We have too much of a revolving door with this type of thing going on, and it's, people are flat out at that level too. Our jails are pretty full. Throwing more people in jail perhaps is not the answer there either. So it's a complex problem that I wish we had a more clear, an easier button to push from the select board level. But as much as it's possible in these conversations with John, I really think if we can move towards concrete, simple ideas that we can work in partnership with businesses downtown and other concerned residents, this is what we should be working on. And I do support for our leadership to hear another conversation about downtown cameras. But let's try to flesh out what that would mean, instead of just saying, well, you're not doing anything about downtown cameras. It's not yet defined, and it really does need to be defined before it can move into action. So,
Thank you, Tim. I see George. If we'll hear you briefly, please, and then we're going to move on to the next agenda item.
Where'd it go?
There.
George?
There, I got it unmuted. I wanted to had some comments about representative town meeting. That's later in the agenda, but I don't know
Yes.
what, wait for then or talk now.
Wait for then.
Fine.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the agenda item 7, which is the consent agenda. John, would you like to speak to those 2 items briefly?
Yes, we have 2 items on.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Thank you very much for members of the downtown, the DBA and of downtown businesses for coming and speaking to us about this again. I do really appreciate the hearing from you about this. I think the whole board does. And I hope that the next time we have a conversation about this, it's going to have maybe a different tone. So I just wanted to say that briefly. I apologize.
Yes, thanks, Ian. 2 items on consent tonight. The first one would authorize Planning Director Sue Fillion to apply for a FEMA hazard mitigation grant of up to $356,000 with a $35,000 town match to replace a retaining wall on the west side of William Street, just down from the Vermont Country Deli. If the town receives this grant, it will free up capital funding that's otherwise being requested in the FY24 budget. Second item on consent would approve 9 special event and catering permits associated with the Brattleboro Love Crawl that is planned for Thursday, February 9th. There's further detailed information in your background materials, but please let me know if you'd like to pull up either of these actions for further discussion or whether you approve the consent agenda.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. John, board, is there anyone who wishes to pull an item from the consent agenda?
No.
Seeing no one, I would entertain a motion. Liz.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Liz has made a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries 5-0. Thank you very much. All right. We will move on to agenda item 8, new business. A, approve FY24 general fund budget. All right, board members, you know it, you love it. It's the FY24 budget. We've spent many, many meetings discussing this, reviewing it in detail. I'm sure you are all as familiar with it as I am. This is an opportunity, a last look, a last hurrah for the budget, and until we send it forward to RTM in a warned item for the RTM agenda, which we will finalize next week. So instead of going through this material like we have done many times, I'm going to open it up to the board and the public. If you have additional questions, clarifications that we need to discuss before we decide to take an action on this. So, board members. Liz.
Yes, we have been discussing this every week since November. I just want to go through this memo and get to option 3. Do you want to have a separate discussion about this one final note?
Yeah. Well, no, we can talk about it now if you want to. Yeah.
I like this idea. I think we've talked about it several times, and delaying the project payment reduces the interest.
I want to give a little context.
I'll let others do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to it for a second?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So really, none of these options changes the fiscal 24
That's kind
budget?
of, yeah. So, yeah, but.
So what we're talking about is Living Memorial Park
Yes.
and the financing for Living Memorial Park. And staff has brought us 2 options about when we would receive funding. And we have talked about option 1 and option 2, which is to apply in May and receive funding in August, or to apply in November and receive funding in March. But this new element is to apply in November 2023, receive funding in March, and make the first payment the following November. And that saves us almost $100,000. And even more over option 2.
Yes, that's a correct summary, yeah.
Yeah, and as this is kind of not going to impact the FY24 proposed budget, it's more about the interest in the future. I was just going to tackle it next, but we can also.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just thought it was part of this memo.
It is part of this memo, and I'm happy we can just also discuss that as well. But board, if you want to talk about anything else from that.
I have no other comments.
And yeah, anything else?
No.
No, okay. Other? No?
I think I do.
No?
We're all commented out.
Yeah, I guess we have spent a long time talking about it. Well, in that case, I'm going to open it up to the public if there's any public participation on it. And I'll let the board think a little bit more in case they have anything else that they have to say. Dick?
I would ask you to reconsider using ARP money for the skating rink. Now, you were pretty implicit that you didn't want to use $1 million. I thought that there probably should have been another denomination, $500,000, that you could have used to lower the cost of that project. I think it's an important project for the community to move forward. but I've also said that I think that you should be using some ARP money to lower the impact on the taxpayers. Daniel, not to pick on you, but notwithstanding Daniel's comment about $500,000 over the life of the loan. So I'd like to hear from you on that, and if there's any interest in using $500,000 for that project, which I think is a great use of that money.
Thank you very much, Dick. Laura, we discussed it, I think, 2 meetings ago when we were discussing the Living Memorial Park generational improvements. And yeah, the discussion was about it was mostly about using $1 million of the ARPA funds. Is there anyone who, I think I stand by my position then that it's really important that we have a thorough discussion on the process for how we're going to use those monies, and that I don't think I don't think that we're there to use ARPA money on this project, but that's just my opinion. Liz?
First of all, I just want to give Daniel's point a little context as I understood it, and that was that we would be spending $1 million of ARPA money and only saving $500,000 over the interest of the life of the project.
That's
and
correct.
That's the thing that I think we all agreed wasn't a sufficient volume of savings. And further, I think, we need to have a discussion about ARPA funds. I think there's a great many things that the municipality can use to good effect for that ARPA money, but we haven't had that conversation yet. And if it was determined that there were funds from ARPA available for this project, it can always be added into the calculations. And so at this time, I'm content with the plan that we have budgeted going forward. And when we have the ARPA discussion, it can be part of that mix.
Thank you, Liz. Other board members on that? No?
I'll just say that I continue to be the sole board member who's opposed to moving forward with this project. I didn't think it really warranted a vote, but I would have been much more comfortable with putting this off one more year, continuing with our fully functional and terrific ice skating rink that we currently have, wrapping the pool, needed updates that we don't really have a handle on yet, into our generational improvements at Living Memorial Park, and then moving forward when I believe we will save a lot of money on interest as the bond bank rates come down. So, given that context, I can't really support using ARPA, even though wanting to save money. I still support wanting to save money, like the one on this project, but I'm still opposed to this project at this time. So that's the weird position that I'm in, but I'll continue to remind people of that.
No, thank you, Tim, for that. I'll head over to, I think it's David, hand up. I feel like my eyesight is getting worse as I continue.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
I don't want to jinx.
Just let me interrupt you for a moment. Just state your name for the record, please.
Sure, David Lovenbach, Chair of the Finance Committee of RTM.
Yep.
And I don't want to jinx what may be a consensus opinion now, but we have taken a position that no money should be spent from the ARPA funds without a overall discussion of the town's priorities and involving considerable members of the public. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not sure if I quite understand the beginning of that. I think that's where the board is landing, unless I misheard.
I think maybe you misheard.
I misheard. Oh,
I
okay.
think we're in agreement with David.
Okay.
At least.
Or the majority of the select board is in agreement with that. Okay, back to the room for any additional comments. Seeing none. So just to clarify, the options that we discussed, Liz, that Liz brought up. So these are FY25 issues. So we're not going to be deciding on one right now. We're just going to be approving the FY24 budget as proposed for going to RTM tonight. And if I don't see any other comments or, and I guess if there is anybody who's sort of tuning in really late to this budget discussion and they're like, how is the board not talking about this more? It's because we have really spent a very long time discussing this. And this is, this is the opportunity for us to sort of have one last look. And I would say that I'm proud of this budget. I'm proud of the work that the board, but more importantly, that municipal staff have put in to getting this ready for us for our discussion, review, and hopeful approval tonight. I'm just very grateful, and I don't think I am fully aware of how much work goes into it. So thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Do you want a motion?
Yeah, and I think with that, I would look for a motion. Daniel.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Elizabeth, do you want to?
No.
All right. I move to approve the FY24 general fund budget as presented.
Daniel has made a motion to approve the FY24 budget as presented. Board members, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to move on to new business agenda item B, the 2023 representative town meeting. And we're going to begin with reviewing the warning, and I'm going to invite our moderator up to the presenting table. And then we're going to, after that, discuss the format and the implications of H42 and what that could potentially mean for the board. But we're going to start with actually looking at the warning itself. So, David, welcome.
Hi.
Hello. So I wanted to give you an opportunity. This is the proposed warning and the organization of the articles is proposed by you. And before the board kind of goes through it page by page, I just wanted to give you a moment to speak to sort of your reasoning on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm David Gardenstein, town meeting moderator. I used to be on Selectboard for 6 years, so I've been involved in generating the agenda and working through the articles on the agenda as well. I think it's fair to say, I don't really recall having an intentional discussion about how the articles on the warning would be grouped and placed in order to deal with the integrity and flow of the meeting as a whole. I remember sometimes talking about individual articles and whether they needed to go together. And there was a lot of discussion about individual articles, but I don't remember having that type of discussion. And, it sort of makes sense. The select board's role is to execute the town's business, among other things. And so you're planning for the coming year and you're putting together articles that will support the town's business for the coming year. And then town meeting is the business meeting where voters get the opportunity to consider all of that business and all of that work. And really, it's the moderator who's dealing with how does that meeting flow. And I wanted to take a look at the agenda with that in mind. The very first consideration that I was thinking about when looking at the articles as a whole was the comment that I've heard for many years. Why does consideration of the budget come so late? That is the core work of town meeting. And why are we dealing with this at 4:00 in the afternoon for the first time when we got here at 8:30? And so the first work that I did was was culling out all the articles that needed to be heard before the budget because they will impact how does the budget ultimately, what's the number that's ultimately in the budget. So if you look at the current draft of this warning, Articles 9 through 17 are all of the financial articles that need to be decided on before the budget is voted on. 9 through 17. So that includes the Mountain Home Park Special Benefit Assessment, the DID assessment, the Marketing Initiative, the CEVEDS grant, the Human Services funds, how much you get paid, the 2 smaller articles to ratify expenses that appear to already have been incurred, and then the transfer from the fund balance, and then to go to the budget itself. So 9 through 17 have to be dealt with before 18. Now, it didn't seem that we want to jump right into the budget for the very first article. Let's get a little bit of work done beforehand. Let's, rev up the engine and kick the tires before we get into that discussion. And there's also some other things that really should be discussed early. So the first 3 articles that we included were ratify, approve, and confirm town clerk, town treasurer, and town attorney. Give us an opportunity to work through the procedures a little bit in non-controversial items. There's a little bit of transition then through other financial items, or 2 other financial items, the auditor's report, the CPA, and then borrowing money in anticipation of taxes. Right? So those are now 6 articles where we've dealt with basic organizational matters, we've dealt with some financial issues, and they really shouldn't be particularly controversial. 7 and 8 are the bond issues, and they're going to be voted on by Australian ballot. There's no longer a prohibition on the polls opening while the discussion is still going on, but it's prudent, if there's going to be discussion, to have that early. So we do the first 6, what I call introductory articles. We then open the floor to talking about the 2 bond issues that are going to be voted on, and then we go into the budget right there, 9 through 18. And if there's any questions about the direction or the order or placement of 9 through 17, I can answer those, but it seemed to make sense grouped that way. And then what's left thereafter are various appointments: Capital Grant Review Board, Town Finance Committee, Human Services Review. And before we do Human Services Review, might as well talk about what'll be the percentage allocation for the coming year. And then Library Board appointments, and then the amendment to the town charter for not the amendment, but the reappraisal, and then the other business. So it seemed to me that it made sense to structure the budget in that, structure the warning in that way. And that's what I proposed. If there's any other questions, I'd love to hear them or answer them.
Yeah.
Try to respond if they're directed to me.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I want to just say, I hope that we continue this process moving forward for future years, because I think thinking about the organization of the warning is really important. So I thank you for bringing this to us. And Daniel?
Yeah, just a clarifying question. So Articles 19 through 23, appointments to various boards and committees. I think in previous years, we've seen those earlier in the warning. And so that's one of the ways that you've tried to get us to the budget articles quicker, and I appreciate that.
Oh,
thank you.
Excellent. Other board members? Liz?
I just want to thank you. It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
Makes for a shorter meeting.
or a better organized one.
Yeah.
And that's, and that goes to accessibility and a more efficient meeting. Other board members? And also, this is an opportunity, if you having reviewed the articles, if you have any questions or issues with wording of any of the articles, we are not approving this tonight. We're approving this next week, correct?
Yes.
Yes, so if you, in the interim, see something, we can bring it up again. But I did want to address the order now in case we needed to reorder it, or you had any questions with David on ordering. Jess?
Thank you for this. This is awesome. I was curious why you put the reappraisal so close to the end.
It didn't really fit with anything else. And I think, although I'm not in the administration, on the board or working with administration, I think that it's really sort of pro forma, because my hunch is that we're going to be required to do this reappraisal because values are changing so much.
Well, it's interesting. It's not quite pro forma because it's going to be another year, right? So, but I think you're right that this is inevitable and it's very soon. It's more about securing the experts.
And I mean, I certainly don't think that moving it somewhere else would interfere with the flow of the meeting if that's what you wanted to do. It was just one item that stood very different from all the others.
I would agree, though. It was one that I thought to myself when I looked through it, whew, we're gonna discuss that pretty late, and that might be something that people want to discuss at length.
Because
but
it is.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, because it is not a pro forma thing. It's more of this is a big policy choice for the RTM to weigh in on.
Yeah, and it's the town being proactive. That's
Do we want to do that?
we want to. Yeah, we want to.
Well, then it was my ignorance putting it very last. And move it if it seems appropriate.
Daniel's shaking his head as maybe we should. Liz, I'm going to get to you unless.
Well, we
Daniel-
could just move it to right before 19.
That was my proposal. I was actually also going to propose that 25 moves as well, in the same way.
You thought you were going to get through this without us.
25, yeah.
Yeah, those two are going to need some conversation.
Oh, they got this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot.
So I would propose moving Articles 24 and 25 ahead of Article 19.
What is current 25?
Current 25 is the New England Center for Circus Arts.
Property
Right, I
tax
saw that
exemption
petition,
request.
but
Yes.
my 25 is other business.
Okay, so
I move other business first.
yes.
Recent addition.
Okay, so let's tighten this up. So the kind of proposal right now is to move Article 24 to become to be right before Article 18. Is that
Right before Article 19.
okay? To become the new
New 19.
new 19. Board, how do we feel about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel good.
I don't. Yeah. If we don't need to vote because this is not, we're not approving it tonight.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've got head nods, so that's
Yep.
good. And then Daniel, what was your suggestion?
Article 25, the property tax exemption for NECA consideration, just goes after the consideration of the townwide reappraisal. Plenty of consideration next to each other.
Can you say that again?
Article 25 in the draft warning is to see if the town will exempt property taxes
Yep.
for NECA.
Yep.
And I would like that to come earlier in the meeting because, for the same reason, we want to have discussion while people are fresher.
And that's the late edition. You didn't have that on your radar, correct?
I understand. But I signed the petition. I saw it go, so I an opportunity to vote.
Sorry.
Second. My only suggestion, historically, when we would deal with the exemptions piecemeal, and they would come up every year,
Yeah.
they're really, although they don't have a direct impact on the budget, they're a sort of a budget issue. And so you might consider putting it right after the human services funding article, because it really is a category, a broad scope, a human services issue. So
Yeah.
you might consider moving it up to number 14, because although it doesn't have direct impact on the budget, it is a human services funding issue.
Daniel, does that work for your?
Very
think
reasonable.
What I would like the board to do is try to maintain the structure that David has created, and so yeah, let's put it up. Other board members, is that?
I agree
Tim's?
with that.
Okay.
I have a related.
Wait, let's tackle one at a time.
Sure.
Are you cool with Article 25 becoming Article? It would become Article 14, I believe. Yes.
Yes.
Tim?
Indeed.
Okay. You have a related?
My related question is, Article 13 is the human service budget, correct?
Yes.
But then we do not take up future human service
Until after.
until Article 22. Didn't we typically do it right after? Or?
Last
That
year
was an
we,
intentional decision on my part. I'm not saying that you need to agree with it. This was just a recommendation to you. But that is something, it seems to me, that arguably can be discussed after the budget has been approved. Everybody will know what other expenditures are
Yeah.
happening.
A little more context.
And I kept it with the Human Services Committee appointments, but did separate it out from the Human Services article. You choose to do it differently, works for me, but it seemed to be a little bit different in kind. That was the rationale, anyway.
Not sure I feel strongly. I just wanted to sort of highlight that.
okay. I find that rationale compelling to keep it where
I
it
do
is.
too.
Other board members?
Yeah, just expanding on that, like the amount of human services funding was sort of a percentage of the general fund budget. So knowing what the general fund budget will be will inform how rich we're feeling.
Okay. I want to turn it over to John for a quick modification of Article 8, I believe.
Yes, and, but, so I'm understanding that we're not moving Article 20.
It was Article
22.
22. That's going to
staying-
stay where it
okay,
is. Yeah.
great, thank you.
At the moment, we've only moved Articles 25 and Article 24.
Yes, okay. Just for the board's understanding, it was an error that we made in Article 8. It will be coming back corrected to you next week. The error is that we did a cut and paste on this, and it referenced a similar article on the water treatment plant. This is actually for the water system Phase 1 improvements, and we will correct that language. The numbers are all correct. It's just the title of the project that we made an error about. So apologize for that, and we will fix it next week.
Thank you very much. Yep. Other article?
Are we going to talk about the actual town meeting day one in as well? Or just the?
Yeah.
It's next, right?
Well, we're talking format of town meeting after we're done with the articles.
But I mean, this town meeting day.
The
March
election.
7th. Article 1, elect
ballot.
officers. Article 2, what it is. Just so that people in the public know what they're going to be voting on March 7th. Do you follow?
I follow.
Let me help.
I follow. Go for it.
Okay, clearly everyone else follows.
Yeah. So we just talked about representative town meetings warning, which will take place on March 25th. But on town meeting day in Vermont, Brattleboro holds an election, which is March 7th, and people will have two things to vote on. Well, a bunch, really. Article 1, right, is like electing various people, select board members, town meeting members, other people who I'm forgetting. And then Article 2, there is.
Okay, sorry. We have no control over this. So, so I don't believe, right? No. Yeah. So
But it's in
we have
material, and
control.
the public should probably hear about it.
Yeah, it's also in the backup material, and we're gonna. But
Well, there'll be there'll be information.
Daniel would like to share.
I guess I'll just
Article
finish my
2.
sentence
Sorry,
if
I
that's
apologize.
okay.
I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah. And Article 2 is consideration of a charter change, which the voters will be asked to learn about, and we'll have two opportunities to do so in hearings that we will be conducting in this very room that you mentioned earlier.
February 3rd, February 7th.
Yeah, and the charter change is about evictions and proposes, I don't know, it's complicated. And I would encourage people in the community to learn more about what is being proposed, to explore what the pros and cons are of it in advance of voting either on March 7th or earlier, because early voting begins when, Town Clerk Hillary Francis?
February
Early
15th.
voting begins day after Valentine's Day, February 15th. So you'd want to be informed before you cast your vote.
Great. Thank you, Daniel, for speaking to that.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I
Glad you
interrupted
hold
you.
That's okay.
Valentine's Day as such a benchmark, Daniel.
So, are there any other articles for the warning for annual representative town meeting that the select board wants to discuss or consider rearranging before I turn it over
No.
to the public? Okay. I was gonna look to, let's make sure that guy's, yep, there is a hand up. Yes, that one I cannot read.
Eli.
Eli.
I think he wants to talk about the next part.
Well, I'm not gonna assume.
Hello, I do actually want to talk about the order of things.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, first off, within the range of the budget questions, that is to say, Articles 9 through 17,
Yes.
is it possible or advisable to order them in descending order of dollar value? Part of the discussion of town meeting that happened last year was there was frustration about deciding a 40 grand thing and then a 20 grand thing and then a 200 grand thing. And getting the big ticket things like the human services bundle out of the way first and then descending will help our collective sense of scale. This is, I realize this was almost a year ago, but that's my recollection of the discussion at the time, was if we could have, let's do the big stuff and then let's do the littler stuff down the way. Is that possible? That's question one. And a related question is Article 16 has no number. So I don't know how big an item that is and where that would go in the order. Do we have a number on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eli. Okay, let's tackle them one at a time. So the question is first, ordering of the budget items specifically by expenditure in descending order. Yeah.
It's certainly possible to do the individual items preceding the budget in descending order. Within those items, I did try, again, to group them in a sort of thematic way.
Yeah.
So the first 4 or 5 of those articles, the first four, have to do with particular assessments that I believe the first 2 anyway are statutorily required to pay off bonds and funding that we provided for, well, the first one anyway, the Mountain Home Park. And then we're raising the money from the DID, and then spending the money for downtown business. So those 2, again, were grouped together thematically. And then SEVEDS really is another arguably marketing initiative. So I tried to do them thematically. And then what was left was the human services, because the rest of them thereafter,
Let's let David finish, please.
the select board comp is then a separate sort of an article. And then we're finished really with those individual items, other than to go to, again, ratifying expenses that have already been incurred. And I don't know what happens if those are turned down. I've questioned it, but I don't know. And then you get to the fund balance question, which again is a separate issue. So I tried to organize them thematically, and I hear Eli's inquiry, but that's why I did it that way.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, let's speak on that first. I think I saw Tim first. I'm not positive though.
I was just gonna say, I think if you can't do both thematic and number-based.
Yeah.
And the problem with number-based is that many of these things are not like the others. For instance, if this SEVEDS goes in wherever, as far as like in line of amount expended expended, that is not coming from general fund. It's program income, very different pot of money. So
that's a good point.
that's very confusing. Because, I mean, if you could establish that it's only, general fund funds that you're doing that, that's a different story. But when you're, especially the downtown improvement as well, it's an assessment, sort of a pass-through.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't feel like and then the problem with that idea is that sort of, is that the budget is really the big one still, because that's the huge one. And you can't put that first because we have all these other factors that are going to affect that number. So just chaos theory to try to go with that over thematics.
Thank you, Tim. Jess?
Yeah, I think one of the frustrations that we heard both in the meeting and, with folks after the meeting was people are so fresh at the beginning early on. And so we spent a very long time discussing, I think it was like a $20,000 or $30,000 item. And when we got to the bigger, even when we got to the budget, I think we spent 15 minutes on it, and it went very quickly. So yeah, just thinking about the speed and time with which we dedicate to those early items and moving as many larger items, I guess, towards the beginning as possible would be helpful, especially in the process that we've had in the last couple of years. But I don't know, it might be different when we're in person.
Liz?
I like the thematic ordering because it allows for a better narrative and understanding about each element. And, we try to explain the budget and the history of it and in so many different ways. And tailoring, like the informational session, to this thematic ordering really helps explain where it's all coming from, where it's all going.
Yeah. Daniel?
I think Tim's point is a good one, and I would propose a sort of compromise where we actually do take Eli up on their suggestion of general fund expenditures, largest to smallest in that order, and the other stuff that's assessments and CDBG dollars, we can either stick it at the back. I would say stick it at the back. Those are pretty non-controversial things. But the general fund expenditures from in size order, I like the idea of it. But I'm open to being dissuaded if there are good arguments.
I'm sorry, what did you think was non-controversial?
Yeah, so you want him to repeat what he's saying, or?
Just the part about, I don't think those things are
I think like the assessments, like for example, the Mountain Home assessment, the Downtown Improvement District assessment, pretty non-controversial because they really just need to happen. And then the SEVEDS article, which is using community development block grant money, has at times been controversial, but like it can be controversial later on or earlier. I don't really care. But I think that the point that's being made is that in order to have a better discussion about general fund expenditures, let's try and put some of that stuff earlier in the agenda. And I think that's a good argument.
I think Jess was saying something, or?
I was just a clarifying point, Daniel was taking those four articles, which are now 9 through 12. You're suggesting maybe putting them after Article 17?
I don't know if I quite thought that far ahead.
Which is right before the full budget vote.
Yeah.
Then yes, probably yes.
Or after the full budget vote.
I don't think that could happen,
Okay.
right? But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna argue against it for a moment. I think, I really take to heart that it's the moderator's job to try to make the meeting flow well. And while I think some of the other suggestions that we've made for modifying the warning make sense to me, we are hearing from the moderator that he thinks that keeping it kind of thematic is a good way to move through the meeting well. He's done the representative town meeting completely remote last year, and so I trust his opinion on how to do it. And so I'm more inclined to keep it grouped thematically and see how it goes. And then we can have this discussion again next year. And that wouldn't put the amounts in descending order. That's my yeah.
This is really just a proposal in a working draft.
Okay.
So there's no pride of ownership if you decide to move it around. My thinking in putting 9 through 12 before 13 was that it made sense to deal with some of the real number-related budget issues before jumping into the Human Services article. Because to just jump right into the Human Services article when there really hasn't been discussion of other budgetary articles seemed a little premature to me. So these are also sort of introductory articles leading into the Human Services article. It's not to say that that's necessary, but that was my thinking in putting them before.
Because the alternative is that we could get if we go right into human services, we get bogged down and spend I could
Of course, I'll also note that the work of the Human Services Committee is supposed to stand as a whole. So I'm not sure we expect to have a ton of discussion about that. And we're certainly not seeing individual motions to change individual allocations. But it seemed to me that it was something that should follow after some dollar item budget articles. But whatever the board decides, fine with me.
And Dick, I see your hand up. Just give us a moment on the. Do you want to speak to this item this thing that we're talking about right now, or do you have a different thing? Hold it for a moment if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay.
Ian, I just wanted to remind you that Eli had
They have a second question, but I think
not a second question, but would have wanted to respond, and you sort of said, "Wait."
Oh,
we're
okay.
gonna talk a little bit more.
Yeah. If Eli wants to had a comment on as we're sort of working through this, and I haven't forgot about the second question either.
Thank you so much. My recollection was just that the CEVEDS article last year was passed based on their human services work. They said, "Oh, we do work with Afghani refugees. We do human services work. You should fund us." That was the extent of their defense last year. So it seems to me that we can group these things in a number of different ways, but I really do like the idea of grouping them by the fact that they come out of the general fund pot. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
But they don't.
Don't, but
They
in
don't.
the case of CEVEDS, it doesn't.
Some don't, some do.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you want to put your
Right,
proposal
entirely
back
my
up?
point.
Yeah, so my proposal is that we take Eli up on their suggestion of attacking them in order of the highest dollar value, but that we only do that for things that come out of the general fund, and that the other stuff that's left over just goes after it.
Oh, instead of
Yeah.
okay.
So for example, Article 17 is about 1,800,000. Oh my God, where's my brain? $1,087,000 and change. That's a lot of money. I propose that is the first thing that's considered in the money articles. And then just going down from that to the smallest thing is considered last. And then there's a couple of assessments and the CDGB money. I don't know. I think that the intent, right, is to make the meeting as good as it can be, to have a rich discussion about important things as soon as we can. And, I don't see any good in sort of like tiring people out and making them wait, and then having them be tired at 3:00 in the afternoon when they're considering millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's my
I don't find your suggestion quite clear enough to know exactly where things would be.
Crikey.
So
Okay.
you'd put 17 up to, and then do you want to move?
Yes, so let me.
Sorry, so the board knows
That's
actually
fine.
what they're considering.
So I would move Article 17 to be Article 10. And then I would next take up Article 13, and that would become Article 11.
Did you say 13-1-3?
Yes, sir, Human Services. I don't know how much the radios cost, I don't recall, so that.
Oh, and let's just address that right now. Does that need to have a number?
I'm not sure if it needs to have a number. Patrick?
I think it's a really good question. I think we should consult with the town attorney tomorrow.
Okay.
I know it's in the capital request for 140,000, and some portion of that has already been purchased.
70?
The exact number, I
Yeah.
don't recall.
82.
And whether or not that needs to be included in the article, we can take a second look at.
Okay, excellent. So that'll, Eli, I hope that answers the second question. We will look at that again next
Right.
week.
So let me get back to it. So
Yes, thank you.
Article 15, which is $120,000, would become Article 12. Next up, Article 11 is $45,000 from the general fund budget, but it's like based on a percentage of whatever. It's coming out of the general fund budget. Article 11 is now Article 13. And then probably Article 16 becomes Article 14 or something like that. Article 14, compensation for select board members, becomes Article 15. Article 12, CDBG money for SEVEDs, yes or no?
And that,
How much money becomes Article 16? And then the assessments become, Article 9 becomes Article 17, Article 10 becomes Article 18, and then we're back to the rest of it. I don't know, it's just a proposal.
Board, thoughts?
I'm not biting at the utility of large ticket items first, but if it doesn't disrupt the pots of money argument or the thematics, then I guess I don't have an objection. But I think there's nothing unusual to considering $80,000 and then considering $300,000. I think that's part of the job of RTM, is to weigh each article fairly.
Daniel?
So Ian said, why don't we just do it like we always did, or do it like it's proposed and then try it next year? Let's just try it this year, see how it goes.
Because this is different than last year. That's why.
Right.
That
Well,
grouping it thematically.
let's make it different
because, No, but because grouping it thematically is a proposal that we're looking at now, which
Yeah.
we haven't tried.
Yeah.
So I'm saying why don't we could try it as proposed by the moderator in this thematic way and see the effect it has on the meeting. So just to be clear though, it's not the same as every other year.
It's a little different, but I think every preceding year, it is usually sort of linked. You know, you do tend to work with the downtown organization stuff next to each other. And,
Liz?
I like the thematic order that it's in. An attempt has been made and has been modified to move some of the extraneous things to the end with the same purpose in mind as Daniel's, and to get the big budget number discussed earlier in the day. And that's enough for me.
David, were you able to follow Daniel's
I was.
thoughts?
Have no other thoughts.
No other thoughts, okay. I'm looking if there's any other select board thought on it, or I'll also hand it over to Dick. We have no other. I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for, David, for doing this. Interesting. When I listen to the discussion, every article is relevant, but the reality is the DBA budget is not going to take a whole lot of discussion. And I understand the sequencing, but the article that gets the least amount of time and has the most amount of value is the budget. That's the quickest article here. And the most time is taken by the town manager going through the budget, or the chair going through the budget. And most likely, depending upon how I feel, if I ask any questions, there usually isn't. That's a joke that nobody got, but more often than not, there are not any questions on the budgetary process. And so I don't think you're going to change, but regardless of sequencing the general fund budget at the top and then all these other articles that are going to affect it, or doing these other article questions, it's still going to come out the same at the bottom. The reality is, at some point, someone's going to say, okay, the total of all of this today, the impact on the tax rate is going to be X, Y, Z. I think the time issue is probably the most relevant thing. And the biggest complaint that we've heard from people not wanting to participate in town meeting is because the length of time that it's taking. And any one of these articles, these small dollar amount articles, can take an hour, can take an hour and a half. It's not like, you're new, we're going to put time limits on how much time we can. I mean, the big kill thing that's become so prevalent is move the question, which I think has become detrimental at town meeting. But some of these things are getting belabored to death to the detriment of the wellness of town meeting. So I'm not opposed to what David's done. I think he's put a lot of thought into this. But I do think, even though it's a financial matter, I think some of these financial matters that really don't have a lot of discussion can be put after the general fund budget. The money for the Downtown Alliance comes out of the DID district. It really doesn't have a financial impact on the town as a whole unless you're a commercial owner. You have to be a commercial owner in the DID district where that has an impact on you. And then the money for CEVEDS comes out of a separate fund. It doesn't come out of the general fund. So those don't have an impact. That doesn't have an impact on the general fund and can come, after we're 19 or 18 is scheduled now. It's hopefully a little bit of thought of expediting a little bit quicker because we don't know how long the bond questions are going to take for discussion before we go to the polls, and we have two of them right off the giddy up.
Yeah.
And a discussion for the reappraisal is important, but I think it's the work that you, the board, will be doing to say to the town, this is important, it's relevant to do this. This has a huge financial impact on us because of where we're sitting with our CLA. And if you do a good job, I don't see that being an overly long conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear the moderator, what he thinks about what I said, or he's standing pat with his cards.
Well, I'll let David respond if he wants to, but
Am I interrogated?
yeah. Well,
Should you
there's
choose to
been a
be?
proposal
Choose to
to
be.
interrogate you, but you don't have to accept.
Well, I guess my comment at this point, I don't disagree with what Dick has to say about those three articles not being out of general fund money. I grouped them with the others because they tend to go together. Really, my goal was to see an intentional discussion of how the articles would be put together on the warning. And I've made a proposal to you, and whatever you decide, I think will work out. But I think it's important to have had the intentional discussion, and that's really my goal here. So that's been achieved.
I was gonna say, I think goal achieved. We're having a very intentional discussion about do you want
And
to?
building an agenda by committee is very difficult.
Yeah, clearly.
That's what's going on
That's
now.
exactly, and we are messily working our way through it. And Daniel?
Yeah, I think Dick's point about those articles that he mentioned, Downtown Improvement District, SevEds. Did you also feel the same way about the marketing money?
Marketing money will affect the budget.
Yes, okay. So the ones that don't impact the general fund budget, I think I understand you.
Yeah.
Let's put them after the budget. Sure, why the
Because
hell not?
there's another thing here is that we don't need to get the articles perfect
Yeah.
while we're talking right now. If we give the correct sentiment to
Yeah. And then the one other thing I would say, Dick made a point about the select board's role in kind of explaining the reappraisal. And I reminded me, hey, there's an informational meeting that happens before town meeting where if the town and select board does a really good job in explaining what's at stake in these articles, by the time you get to town meeting, everybody's informed and they're like, yeah, we know what's at stake. Here we go.
That's exactly how it goes down.
That's exactly how it could go down.
But actually, and I would just say, I appreciate the call to action on that. That's a fair point. I think, especially on that article, that's up to us to be very clear and express why that's such an important article to pass, and that's on us, for sure. Liz?
I think the one way to have an efficient and shorter meeting is to have everyone participate in the informational session. The more representative town meeting members attend, and the effectiveness of what we have to say are the key to a shorter meeting.
Yeah. So where I'm landing on it right now is to move the things that do not impact the general fund behind the actual budget item. And that does address that. I think, I hear Eli's point about also organizing each of the individual ones, but really the big one is talking about the general fund as quickly as we can. And by quickly, I mean all the items are important to discuss, but like getting it sooner in the day because it's such an important one to discuss. So why don't we move those items that don't impact it to afterward? But then Daniel, I would prefer to keep the grouping for the other ones because I think moving from one to another,
Understood. Sounds good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is that agreeable to other board members?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Article 15
Yes, absolutely.
is for an expense that's already been incurred.
Yes.
And Article 16 is to ratify our decision to purchase in advance something. So those have already been committed to. Would those go before the discussion of general fund or after?
That's a good question. John?
Well, I think that's a good point, Jess, that they are different from the rest. And if we could get those out of the way before the discussion of the rest of the budget items, that might work well. But I think we'd be open to having them anywhere.
My thought would be let's have Attorney Fisher look at it as well. And I guess the direction being, if it's not going to impact the FY24 budget, let's try to move it below FY24 budget discussion. That way we move it up while maintaining the rest of the sort of groupings that the moderator has proposed.
Those two affect the FY23.
So
if they're not, So
I guess they would that.
But
with that,
I don't care. I mean, really.
No. My thinking would be to move those after because they are not going depending on what RTM decides on those, and I do not know what happens if they don't approve those two.
Let's find out.
But they would not impact the FY24 budget, so they would under the sort of move of the board we would put them after. Is that agreeable?
So long as that is prudent and legal.
Yeah.
Sort of looking to Patrick on that one. I'm going to just run to the bathroom.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna just open it up to any other questions or comments from the public. I don't see any hands. Zoom. I don't see any hands on Zoom, in the room. Patrick?
At the risk of being difficult, can we summarize, other than the two very specific changes to Article 24 and 25, they got repositioned into a very clear location. Amongst the series of articles that David identified as having financial impact, you wish to order them in such a way as the ones that have an impact on the general fund budget occur first, and in descending order?
No.
If I might, yes, I think they're staying the same that they've been proposed here, except that the SEVEDs, except that, I'm sorry, 10, 11, and 12 are going after the general fund budget.
Yes.
Okay,
10 and 12.
very good. 10 to 12 are going after.
10 to 12.
And then we need to know from the town attorney whether
15 and 16.
15 and 16 will have any impact on the budget, but I think the town attorney needs to answer both whether they'll have an impact, whether it's approved or rejected.
Yeah.
Because either way, if it can have an impact on the budget, it's got to go before. Got it.
And if no, it doesn't, then also.
Then it goes after 10, 11, and 12.
And quick, let's do that before Daniel gets back.
Okay, seeing.
I got it.
You got it, yeah. Seeing no more discussion on the warning, this will come back before the board one more time next Tuesday. And with that, it's 5 of 8, so we're gonna take a quick break and we'll get back to discussing the format. And I'm just gonna, let's just do 10 minutes, and we'll come back at 8:05. All right, thank you very much. It is 8:05, and we're gonna reconvene the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting.
We are live.
So, oh, I'm sorry, BCTV, are we good?
Oh, yes, we are.
Excellent, thank you very much. So we're going to move on to agenda item, of course I've misplaced my, we're moving on to, we're still on agenda item 8, new business B, 2023 representative town meeting, but we are on to B2, which is to discuss the format. So I'm gonna toss this over to, probably straight to Hillary, unless you had anything.
Well, I was just gonna.
But I'm just going to first just provide the board and the public with just a little bit of background. So we've already kind of had a discussion about the format for representative town meeting. Oh. Thank you. So sorry, for those viewing at home, we just had just some chatter in the hallway, so it's a little loud. So we've had one discussion about the formatting for the representative town meeting, and specifically, we were considering holding the meeting in person or holding a hybrid formatted meeting where we would allow for people to be in person or also attending on Zoom. We were discussing that considering what was legal at the time. Now there is Bill H-42, which is, we have a pretty good belief is going to pass and be signed into law that would allow towns and municipalities across the state to hold entirely remote meetings, and including for Brattleboro specifically, because we are the only RTM, the one and only, we could hold our meeting entirely remote. So with that additional information, the vice chair and I had a discussion and believed that it was important to put this question before the board a second time, specifically about doing the meeting entirely remote or being in person fully. And the reason being because we did not really discuss fully remote, because at the time it wasn't something we legally could do. So I want to take a moment to thank town staff for essentially acting on the whim of the agenda setting committee and getting a presentation ready for the board to look at very soon that Hillary is going to speak to, but more specifically putting a poll out to current representative town meeting members to see what their feelings are about going remote or being in person. I think that's helpful for the board in making consideration on the format. And I know that that was a lot of work to do really last minute. So I just am really grateful to staff for getting that together. And I'm going to stop talking now and turn it over to Hillary, unless, John, you had. Okay. So Hillary's got a quick presentation for us. And are we going to pull it up too? Or yep. And board, you've got a printout of the presentation here, and I'll hand it over to Hillary now.
Thank you. So there are a couple of aspects to this presentation. The first is talking about, the original plan to have an in-person meeting. And one of the things that you all had talked about when we heard from the public was what safety precautions are we going to implement at RTM, assuming it's in person. And so a few of us went to the high school gym. We measured out the space. And the basic bullets I'll just touch on, and then the next slide will show you a diagram of the floor plan that we're proposing. So basically social distancing as much as possible, breaking the members into 4 quadrants, having one quadrant designated as a masks recommended quadrant, and the HVAC system will run at maximum capacity. And we confirmed that with the maintenance team and facilities team at the high school, and they said that wouldn't be a problem. Patrick, you'll go to the next slide. So this is a diagram of the layout of the high school gym. It's very different than what we've done in the past, and it utilizes pretty much the majority of the gym for RTM. And so what it does, it breaks the gym, like I said, or the meeting into 4 quadrants, spacing each chair 3 feet apart and each row 3 feet apart. It puts a 6-foot aisle, 2 6-foot aisles crossing in the middle. And then in the back portion, you'll see the public. There's 29 or 30 seats. Those are spaced 2 feet apart between chairs and 2 feet apart between rows. So that was the maximum social distancing we can do, utilizing the space, and it gives a 6-foot pathway around the border. We had, one of the suggestions was a masks only section. We considered that and tried to figure out how to make it work. Basically, there's 36 chairs in each quadrant, giving us exactly 144 chairs in the body of the meeting, plus the select board moderator and clerk. And that's exactly how many members we have. So should every seat be filled and every person come, every seat will be utilized. So unless we get commitments from people and know exactly how many people are committing to being in a mask-only section and wearing masks, we can't have a mask-only section. If we have 10 people who need mask only, what do we do with the other members? They're gonna have to sort of spill into that section. If we have 50 people who are mask only, they're gonna spill into one of the sections that's not mask only. So our solution to that was a mask recommended section. And I think that those are the important aspects of the layout for in-person. Happy to answer questions on that, or I can go right into the poll if you would like me to.
Board, Liz, I guess that answers the question on that. Yeah.
I read somewhere that we would encourage all the members to leave for lunch so that there can be a full air exchange during lunch.
This is the first I'm hearing of that.
Maybe I heard about it somewhere else, but I like that idea. And maybe we could encourage the members to leave so that the air exchange could be complete for the lunchtime.
I mean,
do you want to respond to that, or?
No, go ahead.
Daniel?
I guess we can certainly encourage, we can't require, and that's.
It does speak to one thing that I think is important for the board's consideration tonight, which is that this is an update on sort of like the plan, but where the warning and where the meeting is going to be has to be decided. Making sure the safety precautions are in place and what they're going to look like, we can continue to update RTM with all the way up to RTM itself, and that could include incorporating additional things, and we'll certainly ensure that that's discussed at the informational session, which will give the town staff more time to look at this even further.
The only thing that I would say to that, if I may,
Yeah.
There are some members who are trying to decide how they're moving forward with joining the meeting.
Yes.
And they've been sort of waiting on this discussion to say, hey, am I comfortable if it's in person, understanding the safety protocol, knowing the deadline is on Monday? Yes, we can continue to update. But there are some people who are eagerly awaiting this information to decide whether to run again.
Yeah. And just as the board considers this, we don't need to take action on this tonight if we don't, there's a couple things. One, if the board wants to keep it fully in person, then we've already made that vote. And so it would more be a reconsideration to have it be remote. So that would be a vote that doesn't have to, it could happen tonight, but it also could happen next select board meeting. Am I correct on that? Keeping in mind Hillary's point that there are members of the public who are waiting to know what the board's position is. So my hope is that we could come to a decision tonight on where we're landing. Are there other questions on the first part of the presentation before we get into the data? Tim.
I have an easy layout question and then a less easy question. The easy one, I think, is the select board table, the long table. Does that include town manager, assistant town manager, and Bob?
It includes town manager and town attorney. It historically has never included the assistant town manager, and whether or not it includes the town treasurer is up for debate.
Huh.
Okay.
Daniel?
Is there room in the back for staff?
Yes, that's part of the public section. We've always had 30 seats that was for town staff and public.
Other questions on layout? Yes.
Well, wait.
Oh.
Well, I had a second question.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but you're
apologize.
separating layout, sorry.
Yes, we haven't gotten to, do you want to have a question about the data?
No, it was the other question, is not specifically about layout.
No, that's fine, please. Tim.
Okay, this is great, I think, it's terrific. I did have one suggestion, and I wanted to just bury it. If it's a terrible idea, I'm totally open to hearing that. I did suggest that we either highly encourage or provide, if possible, tests for everybody before the meeting. It just seems like it's something that a lot of people would be happy to do. The simple home tests that are not, the end-all be-all, but everyone is familiar with what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I noticed it wasn't included, so I just wanted to see if that was still, if we're gonna try to make people more comfortable in the efforts of retaining more members, is that something we should include?
I think that we can certainly encourage it. Our HR director, Sally Nix, has been the person who's been ordering tests for town staff. I don't know if an order like that would come from her. I don't know what the process would be for ordering. I would look to the town manager's office for that.
And we could look at what that might cost or whether we could get them for free and if so, provide them.
And do you think it would be something where we would just have them maybe at the town clerk's office for people to pick up to use the morning of? And
I think that we could have them at the town clerk's office, or we can have them, if, like, the last few years, we've had town reports at the library for people to pick up.
Oh, excellent idea.
And we can just keep them with that, pick up town report, pick up
And it
test.
has there it is. Yeah. Wow, I've never done that before. Tim, I think it's a great idea. Really. And I'd like to look into doing that.
It's just a corollary to Tim's, that if there are people come to this meeting and they want to take a test before they go in, maybe there's some sort of an anteroom that they could
It'd be better if they did it at home.
It would be, but
know.
what if they
Forgot.
couldn't get that together?
I'm sorry for jumping in, but I think we should, if we are going to have an in-person meeting, I think we should strongly encourage, in very clear language, that people, when they pick up their town report, also pick up a test, and that on the morning of the meeting, before they leave their home, that they take that test, and if it is positive, they do not come to the meeting. You know, if we encourage an area for people to test at the meeting site, but then people test positive, like, you know, no disrespect to those people, we don't really want them there.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty clear if we have it with the book that they need. Well, that you really should have if you're going to do RTM as an RTM member for preparing and everything, and we have a COVID test there and say, please take this the morning up before you show up.
And maybe also at the informational meeting as well. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
we can remind people.
A lot of people
Oh, that's
pick up
true.
their town reports at the informational
Right.
meetings.
Yeah. Okay.
We're rusty on informational meeting because it's been a while since we had an in-person.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I would just add, I've just been told that we have hundreds of tests at the library that we can use at no cost, so it should be a no-brainer.
Well, in that case, I've got head nods from everybody that we are good with. So let's make that a formal part of it then. Yeah.
And let's hope we get a quorum.
A quorum?
Are there?
I mean, generally.
so, and I have two.
Yes.
One's a COVID precaution and one is layout.
Yep.
So one is, I'm curious if we want to go beyond just offering maybe a section where it's masks recommended. And if we would just want to generally recommend masking to this event. Not require.
That would be, yep. Want to take them one at a time or you want to go through?
Let's go with that one.
Okay. Liz?
I like that idea, but I think that people might feel more comfortable if they also knew that there would be a segment of the location for masks. So both.
Oh, we could do both. That's actually, I mean, I think that's, yeah. So recommend to mask for the whole event, but then have a section where we can't like require it, right? But we could strongly encourage and maybe say, you know, for the comfort of people who are there, this is a section specifically for people who are intending to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would set the bar at, you know, we expect you to be masking and taking extra precautions because there's a lot of us in this room and I think, you know, it should be comfortable for folks to remove them when they speak.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So not required, so that sort of eliminates that piece of it. But the speaking part I wanted to ask about as well. The gym is big. The HVAC system is loud. And there are 2 microphones. I've never been to an in-person representative town meeting.
Oh.
I'm just curious.
So let's
That works.
Yeah, so historically, we've actually had 1 microphone, and we've used much less of the gym. BCTV will be providing our sound, and they have speakers and amplifiers and everything, and the members, when they're called on, will go up to the microphone and speak, and their voices will be amplified that way. The select board members at the table will have a number of microphones as well. The moderator will have a microphone, and there's a microphone in the back by the public section, should anybody need to speak from the public.
Awesome.
That was the second question?
That was my second question. That was
Okay,
really a question.
So let's move on to data, and then we'll pull this down, and we'll have discussion on that, and then we'll take questions and comments from the public. We'll move forward on that.
Perfect. So yes, as Ian indicated, H42 has passed the House and Senate. It's waiting for the governor to sign. We anticipate that will happen sometime this week, but we don't know. And so we took an informal and non-scientific poll of town meeting members. It went out to 133 people based on, and it was town meeting members from last year, because we don't know who the new group is, and ex officio members, including yourselves, myself, moderator. Can't remember if the treasurer was on that because she wasn't a member last year. Of that, we received 69 responses. And the two questions were, would you attend a fully in-person RTM? And would you attend a fully remote RTM? Yes or no? Of the 69, 15 people said that they would not attend a fully in-person RTM. And 9 people said that they would not attend a fully remote RTM. So those are the results that we have. And then one thing that I would just sort of bring to everybody's attention, if you skip to the last slide, Patrick, and then just before we discuss the poll, is just currently CDC has Windham County COVID-19 community level is low, and on the presentation is the recommendations for that. I would flag that Bennington is currently high, and they have different protocol or suggestions from the CDC. And I would recommend to RTM members that as we near RTM, assuming that it's in person, they pay attention to what level the CDC has Windham County at and follow the protocol that CDC recommends.
So, does the CDC currently recommend masking?
Not for low, and let me just pull up high. For high, their number one, the recommendation that comes first is wear a high quality mask or respirator.
Are you kind of pushing against the recommendation for the full?
Recommendation for the
to ask people to mask for the full room and then have a section sort of like amended?
Oh, no. I was, I love to communicate with full face. I have a lot of trouble with masking, but I certainly wouldn't stand in the way of people who, but I think there was some language proposed that we recommend or request people mask. I find the value of communicating with my fellow select board members much higher and better when we're not masked. But I wouldn't mind if a few people, like I masked when I was getting over my COVID thing and all that stuff. So I have mixed feelings about saying that people should mask, because then if you choose not to, are you being looked at as, not with the program? And the reason I asked the CDC question is like, we're either following what the CDC recommends or we're not. And,
So we could amend it to say kind of like to comply with the CDC guidelines when it comes to masking, if we wanted to be in line with the CDC. I also don't really know whether this is something that needs to be decided. This particular thing is something that needs to be decided at any point up until like we're basically telling RTM like at the informational meeting and stuff. It's not in the warning. At least that's
Yeah, I think the bigger question is the H42 in person.
Exactly.
The preamble.
Yeah. Daniel?
Can we get to that?
We are in it.
Great.
I think the question is, do you have any questions about the data before we pull the slide down? No? Okay. Hillary, thank you very much for the presentation. And if you don't mind staying up here in case the board's got questions for you.
Sure.
Board, basically, as I said before, really what's before us tonight for consideration is whether we'd like to reconsider our decision for having an in-person art representative town meeting for this year because of H42. I think you've got data, and we had really lengthy discussion about the sort of positives and negatives to in-person versus hybrid. In-person versus fully remote are a little different. But I think a lot of the things are similar length of time of meeting, making sure that we're not excluding people. I don't think that there's really any 100% right answer, and I really respect that. And so I guess I would just look to have discussion on that for a bit and then we'll hear from, we've got hands who are gonna weigh in as well. So Daniel, would you like to speak first?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I would be excited at the prospect of an in-person meeting for myself. It's been a long time since we had one, and having participated in, I guess, 3 on Zoom meetings, I don't even remember that we did 3, which says something about the meeting. I don't relish the idea of doing another one, but I want to weigh my own personal kind of interest in what kind of meeting I want to attend with my responsibility to make sure that the people who are elected to this body can participate fully and safely. And so, we polled some people. Well, we polled as many people as our currently elected town meeting members. We were told by these people that, most of them are fine either way. They didn't, strongly weigh one way or the other. But we did learn that 15 people who are currently elected to that body would not participate were the meeting to be in person. And for me, that is compelling. And even though I don't really want to attend a virtual, should stop saying virtual because it's not virtual, it's very real. It's just on Zoom. Yes, on Zoom. I don't really want to do that for myself, but I think it'd be the more responsible decision given that the legislature and hopefully the administration will give us the legal power to do so. So I just want to kind of lay that down as a marker. I want to hear what people have to say, but I think it's really important that everyone who's currently elected can participate fully and safely.
Excellent. Other board members?
I'd like to hear the public.
Yeah, okay. You want to just hear from the public or Jess?
Yeah, beyond this, I also spoke to a few folks who had, who were in the process of considering taking out petitions when we made our decision last week, and they decided not to because they didn't want to be part of a in-person meeting. They didn't feel it was safe for them health-wise. So
They could have taken them out and then not turned them in.
before that meeting, I had not really heard from anyone very specifically saying, I can't participate or I don't want to or don't feel comfortable with that. I had heard a lot of, we should make it accessible. But in the last week and then from this survey, I think we see some very clear, I just can't do it. And yeah, I feel like having an in-person meeting would certainly disenfranchise those folks.
And I think that just speaks to why we should make a decision tonight, one way or the other, so that people know before the petitions are due. Okay, do we want to hear from the public? I think looks like it. Okay, so I see first hand is David.
What?
You are still muted, my friend.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No worries.
I do have a preference.
State your name for the record, please.
Excuse me, you're right. David Lovenbach, District 3. I do have a preference for an in-person meeting. I will note that the margin is a margin of 6. So arguably you're going to deter 9 people from participating in RTM because they won't do it on Zoom. But the other question I was going to ask you is, would you also recommend masking and testing for the informational session, which I don't know the location of?
Yes, I would assume so. I think again that would be something that we could talk about and make sure that the information goes out before the informational session.
Okay.
Thank you, David. Next up, I see George, who I appreciate it. I apologize if it was a little short with you before on holding your comment on this until now, but thank you for your patience.
No problem. I just wanted to know whether it was the right time to talk. Couple of things. I first, somebody who might be better at math than I am. I'm looking at that ratio of people who don't want to attend in person, 69 to 15, I think it was. Somebody could nod their head. Has someone extrapolated that to the full number of town meeting members? And if that same ratio holds that morning, do we have a quorum?
I think John can speak to that.
I would just say, remind the board that this was an informal survey. It's not scientific. So what I'm about to say is, you got to take it. There's bias in this, but if you were to about double those numbers, that's approximately with a full body. So you might say that 18 would not attend virtual, and perhaps 30 would not attend the in-person, was the indication that we were getting. So,
And would 30 be quorum still? 30
Yes,
less?
that would put us at 110, assuming we had the full number of seats filled.
Yeah,
right.
which is also in a sense.
So if we had 140 seats filled and 30 people didn't attend, that would put us at 110. I believe a quorum is 70 something, 75-ish, somewhere around there.
So so I guess it's not scientific, so don't take this too much to heart, but it would, and it does, and even, that would assume we have it fully 140. Even if we don't, there's room there if quorum's 75, 76.
Somewhere in there. I can't remember if quorum is based on the full number of seats available or if it's the number of seats that are filled.
Yeah.
And I'd need to look into that and talk to Bob Fisher.
Yeah.
To remember what quorum is based on.
Yep. Second question, George?
It might be good to know. My other question is, what happens if we don't get a quorum?
I believe somebody would move to recess to a date and time certain, and we would have to try again.
Yeah.
And so I hope the board got my letter that I included with my response to the survey.
Yep.
I don't want to see us struggle with no quorum. And I think the board really should reconsider the idea of a hybrid town meeting. It's possible, it's doable, and it would be the method that would exclude the fewest number of people, I think. So that's all I have to say.
We muted you already, but you want to quick with the mute. You want to?
Can you put them
There
back?
we go. I just, what are the board's plans if the week before the town meeting, Wyndham County goes high and the CDC recommendation is masks for public meetings?
To comply with the CDC guidelines.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to speak for the whole board, but do I have head shakes on that one?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend long on that one point, George, but I don't support a hybrid meeting. We heard at length from moderator and also in discussion with the select board that the thing about being accessible includes also keeping the meeting like a reasonable length. And my understanding and from the moderator about what we would have to do in order to have a hybrid meeting would extend the length of the meeting so much that I personally don't think it's the right move. So that's why I think that the board should consider either fully remote, because we know we can do that, or fully in person. I'm going to move on to the next hand unless any other board member wants to speak to the remote. And we already voted on that as well. So.
All right,
Eli.
Hi. George actually covered half of what I had to say, which is to check what a quorum would be. And that I did the math. And yeah, we're looking at potentially 30 people who won't show up to an in-person meeting. What I have heard from, I have not been to an in-person RTM. What I've heard from people who have is that in past years, the mics don't amplify sound. They just route it to BCTV for their viewers. That this has been a consistent source of confusion, but that the mics at RTM in past years have not actually amplified sound. In a spaced out gym with the HVAC going at full blast, I can tell you that even if I were able to go to a masks optional meeting, which I don't think I can do, I wouldn't be able to hear or understand a meeting where the mics don't actually amplify sound, and a sound test would be necessary in a gymnasium, which are notoriously echoey spaces.
Okay.
So I'd like to bring up those logistic points for an in-person meeting. On top of the whole, my goal is to not contract COVID.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I know I'm certainly not alone in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Yeah, I think to speak to, Hillary's going to speak to it first, if you want to, or you want me to.
It's up to you.
Oh, I just think that I haven't been at in-person RTM. I've only, as a select board member, been in remote. But I would ask that they do I would request that they do amplify. If they haven't in the past, I'm not really going to contest that. I don't really know, but can they, and can we ensure that they do, because the HVAC system being loud is an important thing to consider?
I can tell you, I have the contract that I intend to sign with BCTV tomorrow for them providing sound and audio, and on it says amplification for entire room using 2 to 3 speaker monitors throughout meeting until adjourned.
Okay.
So
Can
I
we
believe that answers the
do some testing before to
Yes.
ensure that it's loud enough?
We intend to go February 22nd with BCTV, and they're going to do some sound tests, audio tests, and then they're going to set up the day before at about 1 p.m. and they will be testing everything to make sure that the volume is good.
And will the informational session also be there?
The informational sessions will be at Academy School.
Okay.
And BCTV will be providing sound there as well.
That was like one of the last things that I did before COVID.
That's right.
Yeah. Or COVID was happening.
Right.
Let's be
We
honest.
did the information session and then shut down like 2 days later.
Yes.
Mhm.
That's right.
We used a lot of
was
hand sanitizer.
Cutest meeting because of the hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
We're all like shoulder to shoulder and we're hand sanitizer.
Jess.
Is the informational meeting gonna be a hybrid like we do our select board meetings?
So you all haven't worn the informational meetings. It's really up to you. I think because the district caucuses happen just prior, and that's where people are appointed, if it's hybrid and people don't show up in person, then they can't join the caucuses. So that would be, so.
So the caucuses won't be on Zoom or
because-
hybrid either.
Right, because they're happening simultaneously, all 3 of them at once, in different rooms while the meeting room is being set up. So it's 6:30 to 7 is the district caucuses. Each one is happening at the same time, and then the meeting is 7 to 9.
Daniel?
If you are going to attend a caucus in order to get a seat, then it's likely that you will know the format of the meeting and will have accepted it. So if we are meeting in person, then the caucuses should happen in person. If we're meeting on Zoom, the caucuses happen on Zoom.
It's basically, yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Franz? I'm sorry, Dr. Reichsman?
Didn't spend 6 years in France school to be called.
Hi, for current purposes, Franz is fine.
Okay, fair enough.
And my name is Franz Reichsman, live in District 2. So I would point out from the epidemiologic point of view that when a sampling is flawed, one is not entitled to double the sample size and call it good. And it is virtually impossible that the people who did not respond to this survey have the same characteristics as the people who did. So I would just caution and say, hey, don't figure out a quorum based on a self-selected sample where people responded based on their feelings and the strength of their feelings. You know that that is not representative of the entire group.
Yeah.
So just, keep that in mind. Also, there's a question whether statistically in this group, the difference between 15 and 9 is statistically significant. And that's a little bit complicated to work out probably. And it does also depend on the validity of the sampling. But I think you need to keep both groups in mind when you're comparing the results. So that's about it. I'm not trying to answer the question of whether it should be in person or on Zoom, but I just don't think that the survey is terribly helpful with that. And I also just personally would like to say I really would not want to see a hybrid meeting for the reasons that Ian outlined, that I think it will just make it a much more unpleasant experience and discourage further participation in representative town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. Are you a statistician as well as a doctor? My goodness. Yeah, I guess that also includes. Thank you for that, Franz. Daniel, did you have a response to that before I move on?
Oh, no, it was sort of, well, yes, I do, I suppose. Franz is talking about whether statistically 15 or 9 is significant. I might be slightly misstating what he said, but the point is that there are, some number of people for whom, whether we do it in person or whether we do it on a remote platform such as Zoom, simply will not attend this meeting that they've been elected to attend.
Which kind of gets back to like how I opened this whole thing, which is like, there isn't really a fully right answer here because.
But which is more right? I would say we disenfranchise the fewest people if we can.
I see. Okay. Oh boy. So I think I saw Tim first.
Just a point. I just, because of Franz's comment, I wanted to just also point out that those people have also not been exposed to our nice safety precautions, and so we don't know the effect to which they might have had an influence on that vote. But getting back to the phrase disenfranchisement.
Nice.
I wanted to push back a little bit on that because we're developing these early so that we can have what the plan is very clear to everybody, okay? And I'd like to compare it for a moment, if you will, to anybody out there who is considering running for select board. Anybody out there considering running for select board who have been paying attention to our meetings knows that we are meeting in person, we are meeting maskless, we are meeting, without any major protocols at the moment, 0 protocols from before COVID. Does that disenfranchise them from becoming a select board member? The reason I pose that question is because these are representative town meeting members. This is not a general wide town meeting. So there is a choice that is made, and there are many valid reasons why people might not feel comfortable gathering together. Many of my friends don't want to go to restaurants. They break it sometimes, or they don't want to go play in a gym. They break it sometimes. But some of them don't at all. They just haven't been out since the beginning of COVID. And while I respect that, it is a choice that is being made. So the real question to me is, where is our bar for upending our participatory, in-person tradition of democracy in this town if we move towards an all Zoom meeting? How good do the conditions have to be to get us back to in person? And I would submit that you will never please everyone. There's no way to do it. Because as Dr. Reichsman, very entertainingly, by the way, at his last appearance here, pointed out, that cold is flying around, RSV is flying around. You know, there's all kinds of dangers inherent in gathering in life. But I think the very success of representative town meeting, and indeed democracy in Brattleboro, asks us to be in person. If we can, and if we can't, someone else should serve as a representative town meeting member.
Thank you, Tim. Liz, did you have another comment before I toss it over to Sonia?
I like what Tim said, and I would say that the threshold is the quorum. And that if some people don't want to serve, maybe other people do. And that flexibility is inherent in the way the town meeting is set up.
Okay, Sonia.
Hey there.
Hello.
Sonia Silbert, District 3. I have some things to say, but I'm like kind of flabbergasted, actually, Tim, by what you just said. I feel like what I heard you just say is that if somebody in our town has disabilities or health needs, they shouldn't run for select board. And I hope that's not what you meant, but that's what I just heard. And I'm seeing some of their nodding heads. And that is a really hard thing to hear from our elected representatives. Like, we should make public health requirements that allow people to serve for our town. Like, wow.
Does anybody
That was actually a really hard thing to hear.
I think let's I don't know if you want to my thought is I'd like to keep the conversation going.
Yeah,
Tim, if you want to respond to that, Sonia, I also imagine that you have something to speak on this item. So if you'd like to move forward, Tim, I'll give you an opportunity to respond. But I would also say I'd like to keep this conversation moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a mischaracterization of what I was saying. I was making a comparison, but I'm perfectly okay if Sonia wants to think that that is what I meant. It is not what I meant.
Okay, that was a really hard thing to hear because I have some dear friends who would not be able to do what you all are doing. And I think they would be really great leaders in our town. What I wanted to say was, well, given what Franz was just saying about statistics and not feeling like that survey is statistically applicable, which obviously it isn't, but it gives a story or a snapshot. Another pretty tangible thing you have is that at the end of RTM last year, we spent a long time debating a non-binding resolution asking for there to be Zoom options this year. And more people voted for that than filled out that survey. And I think that's a really important thing for you to keep in mind, that town meeting representatives asked for this. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. I also just wanted to share, I was on the committee last year about trying to make RTM different in various ways. And Kate O'Connor put together a really amazing assessment of the lengths of RTM over the past, I think, 20 years. Last year was the longest year when we went to 2 days, but the year before that, when it was on Zoom, it was in no way longer than it had been in many years past. So in 2020, when it was on Zoom, it was 12 hours and 45 minutes, which is less than it was in person in 2019, less than it was in person in 2013, and pretty similar to how it was in person in years between those. So I just want to say that the length of RTM is a serious issue in terms of having people involved, accessibility, all sorts of things. But I don't think Zoom is the reason why it's too long. And I'd be happy to, I don't know if you all still have those documents from the work that the committee did last year, but I'd be happy to reshare it. And I think just in general, like, I don't think the role of government is just majority rules. In this case, these numbers are supporting that more people would show up if it was in Zoom than in person. And I think the role of government is to try and make sure the folks that are usually the most marginalized actually have a seat at the table. And I think it's really clear which option would allow folks who don't have as much access to positions of power in this town to be a part of our processes. And I really hope that you move it to Zoom.
Thank you, Sonia. You had a brief response, or I'm just gonna toss it to Eli.
Sonia kind of pointed out that RTM took a non-binding vote in the other business section last year. And I recall, like, the week after that happened, we, were picking up the post-RTM pieces. And one of the things that we said about that was, let's come back to this nearer the time because conditions may have changed. And so, like, whilst this poll that we conducted the other day is not necessarily statistically significant, that vote that took place, nearly 12 months ago, is not necessarily significant as well in the same way. And so they're both a flavor of people's opinions, and
at least this is
the
more
five
recent.
of us need to land someplace.
Which is where I'm hoping we're going soon. So Liz, if you want to respond briefly.
I just
and
had
then
a question about last year's vote. I understood that what the body wanted was hybrid.
That's what it was.
And we've discussed the difficulties with that.
Yeah.
And voted.
Agreed.
Okay, and Eli, hand it back to you. You don't mind keeping your comment a little brief, having spoken once already.
I'll be brief as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please consider who you are excluding and what the patterns are. That's it. You are excluded. You cannot please everyone. You're totally right. The difference between 9 and 15 is a small number difference. Please consider who you're excluding, who is traditionally excluded by all in-person meetings at this time. I say as someone who has always zoomed into your in-person unmasked select board meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. All right, board. So seeing no other hands on Zoom and don't see any hands in the room, let's have any further discussion on this now. I want to just get back to sort of procedurally, if we want to, and I love talking about procedure, if you want to go to the remote fully, then there would need to be a motion to change our decision that was made. Was that last meeting? 2 meetings ago. 2 meetings ago. If we want to keep what the decision was 2 meetings ago, a fully in person, then there doesn't need to be a vote, but we would just indicate right now that that's what we're sticking with. And am I right in that? Is that accurate?
Basically, the question is about the preamble in your warning. This is right now what it says. It was the assumption that it was an in-person meeting. If you want us to change this to bring it back to you next week, then we would want to have a indication from you that we should change that.
Yeah. Okay. So if there wants to be a change, then we need a vote, and if not, then there doesn't need to be a vote because it's currently worded as in person.
And just a note that it's not currently legal.
Okay. There's something to that, and I think my understanding is that we could, if we wanted to put it fully remote, then it would be it would basically be subject to passing of H42, and I guess we would figure out what happens if that didn't get signed if that came to pass. Board, Daniel?
Yeah, why don't we just make a motion?
Yep.
And then move forward. So I move that in the event of H42 being signed into law, that the representative town meeting of the people of Brattleboro in 2023 take place on a remote meeting platform such as Zoom.
Excellent. So Daniel has made a motion that contingent on the passage of H42, that the Brattleboro Representative Town Meeting for 2023 would be held remotely on a platform such as Zoom. Further discussion? Jess?
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to say before we vote on this was that I think the way that the meeting is conducted, there are opportunities for members to address their needs as far as breaks, as far as requesting a recess.
That's absolutely true.
If we held it in person, there is not an accommodation that sounds like it meets the needs of the people who feel most unsafe in a large, long public gathering. So I think that with our options on the table, a remote option seems to be the only way to ensure the accessibility of this meeting for the folks who are elected to office, allowing voices of those folks who struggle with health needs and accessibility to be a part of this elected body. That's what I got.
Excellent. Thank you, Jess. Further discussion?
You know, I wasn't going to say anything, but I do also want to remind everybody that it's not completely accessible to those people who don't like to be on a computer, don't have skills. We saw that early on, a lot of difficulty with members getting on. We don't know how many people chose not to serve as RTM members right now because the last 3 years have been on Zoom. So that's also exclusion.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the remote RTM as proposed by Daniel, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Nay. So that's going to fail 2-3. So the warning for RTM that will be considered on next Tuesday, again, is going to keep the language that was considered and passed by the select board 2 meetings ago. Does that provide enough clarity, Hillary, for members who have asked you about what the select board intends for RTM?
It does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that is going to conclude agenda item new business 8B2. And seeing no other business on the agenda, I think there is one more motion that I would consider. Liz.
I move to adjourn.
Liz has moved to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's going to carry 5-0. Thank you very much to our interpreters. Thank you to BCTV for your diligence and good work. Thank you, Patrick, for running the meeting, and thank you very much, Dawn.
Thanks, Ian. And Ian.